Welcome to Monetize the Mic.
I'm Jessica Rhodes.
And I'm Margy Feltune.
And we are the co-owners of the award-winning multi-seven-figure podcast booking agency, Interview Connections.
This is the show to teach you how to transform your business and life with the power of visibility and strategy.
Let's get started. On today's episode, you are hearing one of our amazing speakers from our Visibility Breakthrough live stream, how podcast guesting can heal your past, grow your business, and be seen for the first time ever. I went live for 3 hours recently on Facebook to spotlight several of our clients at Interview Connections who have had incredible breakthroughs in their visibility. And the sessions were so good. I wanted to make sure that as many people as possible could hear them. So we are sharing them with you here on the podcast. I hope you enjoy. Dr. Joli Hamilton, hi.
Hi, it's nice to see you, Jess.
I am so excited. Thank you so much for coming on. You're a huge inspiration for this live stream because I've just witnessed you have so many visibility breakthroughs, and you've been so kind to, you come on a lot of our workshops and master classes, and those have actually mostly been on Zoom. So I'm really excited to do this on Facebook Live and get your story out to as many people as possible. So I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a second, but for those of you just joining us here, I'm Jessica Rhodes, founder of Interview Connections, and I had like a strike of inspiration hit me last Wednesday morning where the words visibility breakthrough just kept coming to me. And I was thinking about all these amazing clients that we have who've been sharing their story on our workshops about how podcast guesting has helped them grow. And every time they share, I learn something new and I see an added benefit and way that they're growing through the process of getting on podcasts. So Dr. Joli Hamilton was one of those women that I was like, can you come on this live stream? Because you just embody, you're so in alignment with what I want to be teaching here. And she's the relationship coach for couples who color outside the lines. So Joli, introduce yourself to our viewers here and share about the visibility breakthroughs you've had through podcast guesting.
Well, you definitely caught me at a good moment because I'm having another visibility breakthrough.
Hot off the presses.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this in the mastermind that I'm in with you. You are a wonderful inspiration for me. I think that an interesting part about my story is that I'm a psychologist. I'm a depth psychologist. So I specifically care most about unconscious motivations and what runs our story underneath and how we can expand ourselves by being aware of that, by bringing more of ourselves into consciousness. And, my specialty is helping people live really bold, exciting lives, right? Like leaving monogamy and shifting to polyamory, leaving monogamy and shifting to some sort of open relationship. That's a bold move. So my depth psychological background and this great big expansive love background, I think people expect that means that I like being visible and I'm totally okay with sharing everything and I'm all out all the time. But I keep finding that there are layers to pull back here. And the most recent one has been coming up in our private group. And I've been really realizing that my professional work, I am very comfortable. Like I just heard you say with Gabby, I'm not afraid to talk. I'm never afraid to talk about my research in jealousy or my work with couples. And I'm not even afraid to share most of my stories. But there has been this theme throughout the last 12 years of my life where I share actually to protect myself. I share parts of my story that I feel like I've processed enough so that people won't ask me about the other parts. And it's a great magic trick, right? Yeah. It's very misdirective. And that's fine in most relationships. But it also leaves part of me off the table, right? I'm not bringing my full self when I show up, if that's what I'm doing. And I'm shocked to find how podcast guesting, how putting myself into these conversations with people who are going to to ask me amazing, brilliant questions, who are going to stretch me and push me, but also who are going to trigger me, who are going to wake up my old wounds. Like those moments, those interviews that don't go perfectly, like, oh, actually, this is probably pretty important work. Maybe it won't be the podcast that I am most excited to share with my audience, but they're often ones where I discover things about me that need to come to light. Where am I leaning in like too far and like trying to ingratiate myself to a host? That's a big one that's coming up lately, right? And it's a catch-22 because I don't think I could find that out unless I was visible. Like I have to be visible in order to find out where in the visibility I'm doing things that undermine my long-term growth and strategy. So that was a long, long answer to your question.
Oh, I love it though. And you're really, what I hear you saying is there's so many layers of the onion to pull back in ourselves, right? There's no destination you get to with visibility because you keep growing and then there's more layers, there's more things to discover about ourselves. So for those of you watching who haven't seen Joli speak in one of our previous workshops or master classes, Joli, can you give kind of the overview? When you first started working with Interview Connections, you had just had a book come out, kind of go through that story. And then I want to kind of jump to present day and some of your current breakthroughs.
Yeah. So, about 18 months ago, I had written a book, and I wrote the book relatively quickly. I wrote it during my dissertation process. So I was excited to get it to press, but I didn't have the time or the thoughtfulness to like make a strategy for the book launch because I was busy doing other things, getting my doctorate. And so I, at the last minute, connected with you. And I was one of those people who like, oh, visibility, right? I need that. I'm going to check the box by connecting with Jess. Yeah. So I signed on with you and I was like, okay, I'm launching a book. Let me talk to people. And at first it was a process of trying to figure out what it is I needed to say because I had this book. So it seemed like I should talk about the book. But very quickly, having the interviews, it became apparent that the book was important for me to write and I value it. But it's not actually the most important thing for me to talk about because I have a much grander vision of what love is and what it could be. And I wanted to talk about that. So what happened at first was I thought, I'll get on podcast guesting and I'll do that so that I can sell more books and launch a business. And I did that, but it wasn't the kind of business I necessarily wanted to run. So what happened is in the first few months, I was making a business that was adequate and it was going to work. I could fill my day-to-day schedule and therefore fulfill my budgetary needs, but I couldn't grow the business I wanted to. So at first it was like a slow walk. Okay. And then I started talking about the things I really cared about. And when I started talking about the things I actually cared about, and I started being more courageous and saying to the hosts who were connecting with me, like, yes, I have this book. And here's what else I talk about. And I started talking about things like jealousy and loving multiple people at the same time. And then the hosts were like, ooh, let's go there. And it meant I had to actually develop a business that was behind that, right? Like, so I kind of went first. I had the conversations and then I was like, oh, I need to develop the back end business that supports that. So at first I wasn't necessarily having the monetary gains, the ROI that I wanted because I hadn't built the business that could receive the ROI. I had to do that. So I don't know whether other people struggle with that, but that was my problem.
That's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to dive deeper into that because a lot of times I think we as business owners kind of expect things to be linear. I'm going to get my messaging right. I'm going to make sure my offer is right. And then I'm going to get on podcasts and then I'm going to get leads and clients and we're good. But that's rarely how it happens. We sign up, we make an investment in something, we go all in on a high ticket coach that ends up not being what we need. But by doing that, it shows us something else that we need. And then that's what we need. And it's like, it is always roundabout. You can never predict the exact linear path. So that's so interesting that, because I remember when you first signed up, I mean, I certainly can't remember the exact topics, but I don't think you were really talking too much about non-monogamy. And that is like, that's you. Like, you know?
I wasn't. Yeah. I had actually been waved off of that topic by someone who has since exited my life. And, I very much had one of those moments of, oh, when people leave your life, it's to make room for the people you actually need to have in your life. And so I had been waved off of the idea that I should talk directly to a non-monogamous audience or talk to people about specifically, I'm even more specific than that, people who are monogamous now, but would really like something more or something different, right? Like that's a niche. And a lot of my early exposure around this was like, oh, that's going to be too niche, or oh, that's going to put people off. Just talk about love, talk about relationships. And it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful because it didn't actually have me building that business. So yeah, I guess I could have taken that linear path that had been laid out, but it was somebody else's path for somebody else's business. It wasn't actually the one I wanted to be running, and it wasn't going to be fun. It might have even been successful in a dollars and cents perspective, because I can help those people. It's even fun for a while. But I really like more complicated situations, and that gets me jazzed up. So when I talked to you about niching down again, when I decided to really get even more specific and I started to go all in on, yeah, I'm for the non-monogamous folks or the people who think they want to be, that let me release from the idea that just because a particular host wants to talk about monogamy or a particular podcast is about that, if I can't find my angle where I can talk to in my niche, then yeah, it's not the right fit. But interestingly, it often is. Often the people want to talk about something new. And I needed to be the bold one who was like, no, I'm going to put my flag in the sand. This is what I'm doing. This is what I talk about. And even though I have experienced hurts and being left out of things in the past, I'm going to claim this as my space anyways, even though it's scary to claim that more narrow niche.
Yeah. And there was such a powerful shift that happened when you really claimed consensual and non-monogamy as you really put that stake in the ground. I mean, we're booking you on podcasts, so you're getting that regular visibility on what we're booking you through. But then I feel like that when you really claimed that space and that niche, you started getting like so many more incoming interview requests, like podcast hosts that we didn't book you on were reaching out, and like major media outlets. So just talk about like, what are some of the big media publications that have like reached out to you to quote you?
Yeah, so that was an interesting sort of unexpected additive bonus. I thought that it was possible that I would become a resource for reporters down the line, but I didn't know what the road in was. Like I'd put my name out there, but that being a generalist just doesn't help them. They need somebody who's specific. So what I had been doing was talking about jealousy over and over and over again. And when I talked about jealousy, even to a monogamous audience, like that started planting some seeds. And then when I shifted and I was like, yep, I talk about jealousy from the non-monogamous perspective, or from that shift of paradigms perspective, like what do I do about jealousy if I want to shift paradigms? That led to connecting. I had a contact from NPR who wound up including me in this wonderful piece that they did about jealousy and how to work with it. And they actually weren't talking about non-monogamy. They were just saying, hey, you know that there's an opposite of jealousy and it's called compersion, and that anybody could use it. And they made me into this adorable little graphic, and it was just so yummy to be included in something that was for a broad mainstream audience based off the fact that I had niched down. Yeah. Fascinating. And, my latest feature was in Vogue, and that was really amazing. I had no idea that was going to happen. The author, Michelle Ruiz, wrote this great piece on what happens if more people know that they don't have to do monogamy. They could choose something else. And she interviewed me and my anchor partner. And that interview never would have happened if I hadn't had all of these hundreds of other interviews behind me under my belt, because I mean, that piece was for the New York Times and Vogue. I've done New York Times, Vogue, and NPR. Those pieces, they need somebody who they know they can trust to be out too. Like they call me afterwards and like, can we really write this? Can we really say you said this? Because it feels edgy to them. I don't think I would have been able to say yes to that, except I'd already said these things for smaller audiences. I had built up my endurance and stamina to stand there and say, yep, that's me talking about my orgasms live. Sure. Yeah, that's me.
I love that. You built up your endurance and your stamina in these smaller audiences. It's so true because there is something that feels very safe about sharing it on a podcast where you're like, yeah, my family definitely won't listen to this show, so you get that, get that practice.
Right. Yeah. The premise of like going on smaller shows, I had heard you talk about it, but it pays off in a lot of ways. There is your podcast audience will get to know you better because they're already dedicated to the host if they're listening to this smaller show. But also, those hosts often ask less usual questions. They ask me questions off the beaten path. They're not trying to get an overview, right? So when I do these big media interviews, they're often trying to take broad strokes. So I'm talking in this very open, broad way about a big topic, and that's great and important. And I'm super glad I get to do those interviews. But the little interviews are juicy and help me discover what my next thread is. Where is my research going from here? Where is my work with clients going from here? And that actually has helped me to deliver better products too. Like I've developed new offers based on the fact that people are asking me different questions than I thought they would. And if that's the question they have, then I want my business to answer that question.
Totally. That's such a unexpected benefit of podcast guesting is offer ideas, because a lot of times as business owners, we create the package and the offer that we think people want because it's probably what we would buy. And then you get into conversation after conversation, interview after interview, and you realize, oh, my target audience actually needs something different. So then you can create an offer around it.
Totally. Like over and over again, I was getting questions from people who were like, how would I talk about this in public? How would I come out? How would I, even if I were interested, or sometimes I would have a host who says, okay, I've done that in the past. I've been consensually non-monogamous, but I never came out. I never talked about it. And so I wound up creating a year-long program that's a group container. So people can start practicing being out and talking about it with other people in a smaller, safer environment. Because I love doing private coaching. That's wonderful, but it continues to silo the couple, right? It continues to keep us in that space of, okay, but I don't have to really own this as part of my life. And that was where my wound was. That if you zoom back 13 years ago, I felt like I had to get crammed down and stay inside a tiny little container of acceptability in order to be myself. Like I had to stay really small. So creating a group container where people can practice like stretching out into, okay, maybe it is safe to say that I love more than one person. Maybe it is safe to say, I don't know exactly what my marriage will look like 6 months from now, but I'm excited to go on this journey with my partner. I'm excited to see where this takes us, and practice saying that in a group of, 5 or 6 or 7 people before you take that to say your in-laws, before you take that to your workplace, right? Yeah. And I never would have known to create that offer if I hadn't been hearing from hosts over and over again, like, oh my God, that must be so scary.
Oh, that's so interesting. I love that. And then the other thing, so you've been you've just been such a dream client. We love working with you. And one of the things that you really take advantage of is the client network at Interview Connection. So I've talked a little bit over the last hour about the client coaches that we have and the coaching and mentorship. And I know that you take advantage of that. Obviously, you coach directly with us. You're in our mastermind. Yeah. The thing I want to talk about a little bit right now is our client network. You come to our client networking calls, and I can think of specific networking calls where, as you were making this shift, you were able to get that feedback from other members of the call. And I've seen like literally other clients of Interview Connections hear you kind of talk about the shift in the messaging and the niching, and then being like, I'm gonna DM you. Right. Can you talk about the value and what you've gotten out of the client network? Also like the referral partners, right? Other relationship coaches that work with monogamous couples, and how you've partnered up with people. Yeah.
And other wellness workers. Actually, I think every really deep connection I have right now, every collaborative partner I have right now has come from this network. And I think that one of the reasons why is because inside of the program, we're all walking through, we're walking through getting visible too. So there is a certain bravery that comes without bravado. That's something that I don't think can be overstated. I've been in a lot of networking spaces, and a lot of times I meet people who are like, they're brash and they have a lot of bravado, and so they'll go out anywhere. But what I meet in our networking calls is people who are humble. They're able to own the fact that they're in a growth process all the time, no matter how far they've gotten. And so I've made great connections with people who I've done workshops with. We refer to each other. We've done email exchanges. And what we're doing is growing. I'm growing the world I want to be in by connecting to them. And a lot of times the feedback that they're able to give me in those, in a call, for instance, when I was playing with the word creative monogamy, because I wanted a word that would help people who saw themselves as monogamous understand that didn't mean that the principles of consensual non-monogamy didn't apply to them. Mm-hmm. And so I just tried out the term, and I tried it out 2 calls in a row. And what I saw was when I used the phrase creative monogamy, boom, 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 smiles all over the place, right? So I've got, 19 yeses, 19, yeah, that resonates for me. When I have said that in other networking spaces, people just weren't tuned in or weren't paying attention. And so I don't really know how you've created a space where people are actually paying attention, but you did. So that's not replaceable. Like I haven't found that anywhere else. And it has helped me, learn my message, but also just connect to the people who I'm like, oh, we just care about the same things. Our specialties are very different, but we care about the same things. Elizabeth, Christoph, and I created a great program to address jealousy together. We're working on something else now. It's a great resource.
I love that. And well, you said it, and I want to echo it. The thing that everyone has in common in the Interview Connections Client Network, and they are networking groups. There's all types of different groups that you can invest in just for networking. And the thing that I'm really proud of that we've created here and that you talked about is that the members of our client network, they're there for networking, and they're all getting visible. They're all on that journey of visibility. And like I've been in other coaching groups and like networking style coaching groups where everyone's there to let's say they're learning how to create a course. And we all have that in common, but then I look around and most of them are like purely behind the scenes. And there's just like a different vibe when we're all on that path of getting visible. Yeah, we're doing the thing, we're networking, we're growing, and we're always getting out there and getting visible. So I think that's where kind of the common thread comes from.
Right. And if nothing else, it has given us a way to talk to each other. I mean, we talk to each other about our interviews, and that has helped me figure out who the people are. So now I have like my subgroup of people. I'm like, oh yeah, we have something in common. And it's been a great way to grow my own podcast too, because now I'm connecting. So many of us are also hosts. Yeah. Now I'm connecting with other hosts. So there's like another layer to it. Again, it's all these layers where now I have a built-in group of people who care about podcasts as I grow my own podcast. Not a bad resource to have.
Yes. Speaking of which, Joli is one of our panelists. We're speaking at She Podcasts Live, which is a conference in October in DC. I think it's shepodcastlive.com. I have an affiliate link, but I don't have like a short link for it. So just go to shepodcastlive.com. And I'm facilitating a session. It's a panel about how to use podcast guesting to grow your podcast audience. And Joli's one of our speakers. So I'm so excited to talk more. So you guys should go to that if you are a female or a female identifying. I think men can go too, but it's She Podcasts Live. So
I got the go-to on that. Actually, they are very supportive of gender expansive individuals. Perfect. And my anchor partner is gender expansive themselves, so they'll be joining me. Amazing. I can't wait. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. So that's just a little plug. If you're a podcaster and you want to grow your audience, podcast guesting is an obvious way to do that because you get visibility to people who already listen to podcasts. You don't have to say, go listen to my podcast. By the way, you have to download this app and find, they know how to find you. So, Joli, thank you so much for coming on. And I know you are busy and there's a lot going on right now. I really appreciate you sharing with our audience. Where can our viewers find you?
Yeah. So I think people should just take a beat. And if anything I said struck a chord with you and you were like, wait, monogamous to what? You should go to joliquiz.com, JOLIQUIZ.com. 10-question quiz, super fun. And it'll tell you whether you are ready to open up or whether you definitely aren't and need a step before that.
Perfect. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say too is if you are in a very niche space like Joli is, consensual non-monogamy, getting visibility to audiences outside of like relationship shows and things like that are really, really important, because when you work with, like, I'll say B2C, like a consumer audience, like you're not, your clients aren't like companies signing up with you, like they're individuals there for their relationship. They're everywhere, like whether you're coaching people in their relationship or their health, people that need help in their health are probably listening to shows about another aspect of their life. So thank you, Joli, for coming here and always being visible here to our business owner audiences, because I know there's people watching that have thought about opening their relationship. Joli is who you need to call so you don't screw it all up.
You got a lot to lose. Let's not do that.
JoliQuiz.com. Go check her out. Connect with her on all the socials. Again, thank you so much, Joli, for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, Jess.
Bye.
Bye.